Hi everybody. Um, I'm on to a second Emily Bronte poem. This one is entitled Am I the Only Being Who's Doomed? And she's reflecting on loneliness. She's reflecting on a lot of things in this poem, but mostly on the feeling of being alone in the world and also on the corrupt nature of mankind. So she's weighing loneliness against the desire to be loved, and in the end, she decides that mankind is corrupt. So I'm gonna start reading stanza by stanza, and then interpreting the poem after the stanza. After I finish the stanza, and then I'm going to summarize it, and then I'm going to read the poem from beginning to end without any stops. So, Am I the Only Being Who's Doomed? By Emily Bronte. I am the only being whose doom no tongue would ask, no eye would mourn. I never caused a thought of gloom, a smile of joy since I was born. So here we see the theme of loneliness and not being connected with people and feeling like people would not be sad if something happened to her. And basically she's saying that since birth she never caused any gloom, she never caused anybody any harm, but still she feels as though people wouldn't care about her. And the next stanza, in secret pleasure, secret tears, this changeful life has slipped away. As friendless after 18 years, as lone as on my natal day. So she's saying that she's felt like this from the day that she was born, and that she has no friends, and at the same time, there's a contradiction here because she's saying there's secret pleasure in her loneliness, there are secret tears, but there's also a hint of being happy with being alone because she realizes that life is changeful. This changeful life has slipped away. So she understands that the nature of life is to change, and that's what has led her to be deflated by life. But there's still like a hint of, even though she's saying that she doesn't have any friends, she's saying that she's content a little bit. Secret pleasure, secret tears. So it's almost as if she's taking pleasure in the knowledge that she has in being alone, and that's a source of pleasure. And also she's looking at the fact that life is changeful, and she has tears in her about that. So basically she's talking about how she's looking for the eternal and she can't find the eternal. Life seems to always change, and this leads to her loneliness. The next stanza. There have been times I cannot hide. There have been times when this was drear, when my sad soul forgot its pride and longed for one to love me here. So she's saying that it's not as if she's always content to be alone. It's not always that she's taking pleasure in it. you know, in loneliness or recognition of why she needs to be alone, she also wants to be loved. And she's not all about her pride. So there is a contrast between the word pleasure in stanza 2 and drear in stanza 3. So life is drear. It's drear that she's alone. It's sad that she's alone. But then the next stanza, she dismisses her feelings in the third stanza. She says, but those were in the early glow of feelings since subdued by care. And they have died so long ago, I hardly now believe they were. So she's saying, yes, at some time, at one point, I wanted to be loved. I wanted to have companionship. But not anymore. Now I just don't care. And then she writes, first melted off the hope of youth. And she's writing this when she's 18. So, I guess in the Victorian era, people had a much more mature outlook on life earlier. She's writing, first melted off the hope of youth. So she doesn't feel young anymore, even though she's 18. Then fancy's rainbow fast withdrew, so her enthusiasm for life died. And then experience told me truth. And again, this is crazy because she's 18, so she's a very old soul, you can tell by this poem. Experience told me truth. In mortal bosoms never grew. 'Twas grief enough to think mankind all hollow, servile, insincere, but worse to trust to my own mind and find the same corruption there. And this is what brings the poem all together, because essentially she's saying it was one thing to see that man is bad, that people are bad, that people are fickle, and she uses the words hollow, servile, insincere. So here we see a soul. Her soul is looking for eternity. It's looking for everlasting love. It's looking for something to hold on to. But she's aware that by trusting in people, she'll never attain what her soul is looking for. So she's saying, hollow, servile, and sincere, but worse to trust to my own mind and find the same corruption there. So she's saying, I'm reflecting on my own thoughts. She's using introspection to look at herself. And she realizes that she's not all that different from the people that she says are fake or insincere. So I'm going to read. So this poem is basically a reflection on loneliness and how, and the contradiction in a person that's lonely. On the one hand, they want to be loved, but there's a reason why they've withdrawn from the world and are in their own world, in their own cocoon. And because within her own cocoon, she finds some sort of stability and some sort of knowledge and a grasp of what is going on. So, from the very beginning. Am I the Only Being Who's Doomed by Emily Bronte. I am the only being whose doom no tongue would ask, no eye would mourn. I never caused a thought of gloom, a smile of joy since I was born. In secret pleasure, secret tears, this changeful life has slipped away, as friendless after 18 years, as lone as on my natal day. There have been times I cannot hide, there have been times when this was drear, when my sad soul forgot its pride and longed for one to love me here. But those were in the early glow of feelings since subdued by care, and they have died so long ago, I hardly now believe they were. First melted off the hope of youth, then fancy's rainbow fast withdrew, and then experience told me truth, in mortal bosoms never grew. 'Twas grief enough to think mankind all hollow, servile, insincere, but worse to trust to my own mind and find the same corruption there. Hope you enjoyed it. Kisses.